Welcome back to another episode of the Max Stern Podcast. Kyle Stitch here alongside James Finch. And today we finish up our rankings of the front office. We're recording these in tandem because we had planned to do them all in one recording session. So that's what we're doing. So putting this in the bag for a little while. So if you are listening to this and something has happened that we were a little bit wrong, we did record this one a little bit in advance, kind of continue on our discussion. So we appreciate you listening. Max Stern Podcast available on all major podcast platforms. Content, including our contract projections, are available on X at AFP Analytics. Blue Sky and Thread, same handle as well. Through there, you can also find our link tree, which has a link to our Buy Me a Coffee, our tip jar. If you feel so inclined to support our work financially, we appreciate any contributions. And at the end of the off-season start of the NHL season, we'll take 10% of all proceeds and donate to Rochester Emergency Veterinary Service. If you missed part one of this episode where we talked about the 10 worst front offices, I think it ended up 10, maybe it was 11 front offices in the NHL. You're fact checking me now.
It was 11.
It was 11, 10. Well, we had to talk about the Rangers and Canucks in tandem. It just felt appropriate. So, anyways, we are going to pick up where we left off, which is with the 21st worst or 21st best, 12th worst front office in the NHL.
Glass half empty or half full?
It depends if you're filling it up or if you're drinking.
Depends who you're a fan of.
Yeah. Anyways, we won't go philosophical here. So these were kind of rankings that I had put together. If you didn't listen to the last episode, I kind of went through and put my rankings. You were going to go and also put yours, and then you were looking at it and realizing most teams you're probably putting within a couple spots where I had them. So
Right.
generally kind of talked about teams in groups and kind of analyzed them together. And then I asked at the end, would you take one of these over another type thing? And I think one thing we kind of ended the last episode with that will kind of also carry throughout this one is, so we're ranking kind of based on the moves they've made and kind of where their teams sit and everything like that, which is a little different than the question of if you were kind of starting a team or had to hire for a franchise, which front office would you want to hire? And so we'll kind of integrate both those questions in this time. Last episode, you had chosen of the 11 worst front offices, you said you would have wanted to hire the Pittsburgh Penguins front office to start your organization. I guess we'll kind of put it that way. I did not commit to an answer because, frankly, I don't love any of those options. So I guess we'll kind of keep that in mind as we move into my 21st best, 12th worst, Boston Bruins. To me, they're fine. And I think we're going to start using that word a lot this episode.
They are treading water.
Yeah.
They had some injuries last year, specifically on the blue line, McAvoy and Lindholm. So having hopefully full healthy years from both of them, that's your top pair. That's very important. Hopefully this off-season training camp, preseason goes a lot more smoothly for the goalies on this roster than it did last year, looking at Jeremy Swayman.
Which also some blame for that falls on the front office as well.
Yes.
Should probably a lot of blame.
Oh, I'm to be clear, that is kind of who I do blame. I say looking at Swayman because that was his situation. As far as moves this offseason, kind of more bottom of the lineup depth moves than anything. Yoki Haru looked really good with Zadorov.
Yep.
Once he got to Boston, and they ended up keeping him at a solid value, I believe. Brought in Arvidsson at a pretty low cost and trade from Edmonton. That's fine. Hopefully he can kind of be a secondary scoring presence for them. They remade, I want to call it their fourth line. It could kind of be their bottom six as in some of these players might actually play on their third line. And if you can't tell by my tone there, I find this to be an issue. Tanner Jeannot, 5-year contract at $3.4 million. That's one of the more egregious contracts, in my opinion, that was signed this offseason. There are a handful of them, maybe even two, but did not like that signing. They brought back Sean Corrali and Michael Esimont,
Yep.
which that contract was fine. And really, Corrali's fine too.
Yeah, so I'll just jump in real quickly. Like I had averaged out, if you listened to last episode, you kind of know what I'm talking about. If you're new to this episode, welcome. What I did for all teams is I kind of averaged out their average air based on what our projection was for all the players they signed this offseason. And Boston actually graded out basically fine. So yeah, maybe an overpay for Jeannot, but they made up for it elsewhere. I think Yoki Haru actually maybe end up less, so that brought them down a little bit. But
I think Yoki Haru was a touch lower than our projection. I think Mason Lowray, his bridge deal, was a touch lower than our projection.
it was
Maybe it
I
was
think it was about right on our
about right on.
projection. Yeah.
Okay. The big one that was the lower was the
Oh,
Morgan Geeky
yes,
contract.
yes, that's the
That's kind of where I was going to end there. Geeky, 6 years, 5.5. I don't know if you have it in front of you. Geeky, I want to say we had 5 years, like 6.5.
I do have it in front, and I can tell you in 1 second. Yes, you're 4 years, 6.5.
4 years, 6.5. So 2 more years on the term, the actual contract, 2 more years on the term, and $1 million less per year. Great work. He scored 30 goals. It was a breakout year. If he doesn't score 30 goals and he scores 24, still a pretty good contract for them. So yeah, ultimately, as you said, everything pretty much evened out from a average air standpoint. One of the better teams at breaking even, pretty much. To me, it really is the lack of scoring depth. Ultimately, when I look at their lineup, I kind of see a first to, well, that's being nice. I see a second line, a third line, and two fourth lines.
And David Pastrnak.
He's the only reason that, well, that's not true. Lindholm Geeky is fine. That to me, that's a clear second line though. If you have Geeky, Lindholm, Pastrnak.
Yeah. I mean, on a good team, Pasternak's probably the only one on this roster playing on a first line.
Yes. Yeah.
Have a good first pair of defense as well. Actually,
Yes.
probably their blue line's fine.
It could be a little better, but they could do a lot worse.
So where I think Boston ends up makes this episode instead of the first episode is I do give their front office credit for making some of the tough decisions and acknowledging we maybe ran this core as far as we could have. Let's start to recoup some assets.
Yep.
And that's not an easy thing to do, especially with trading Brad Marchand to Florida and making a deal with the Toronto Maple Leafs, sending Brandon Carlo there.
Yep.
Those are not easy moves to make. The Carlo trade in particular was probably, I wouldn't say a necessity, but I think it brought them back some prospects that they needed. And that's going to be hopefully a step in the right direction, but that's just it's not an easy decision to make. So to me, they get credit for that. And then also this offseason, I don't disagree that the Jeannot contract's probably going to be is not great, but 3.4 in a couple years isn't going to be the biggest issue that they have. Basically, they didn't go and use futures this offseason to try to to speed things up. They actually are trying to retool a little bit. So
Yes.
to me, I think the front office deserves some credit for having that approach. I think there's some questionable signings decisions. Like Lindholm is a lot of money on a long term contract. I don't know if I like that was going back last offseason. There's some question marks that keep them to me a little bit lower, and the
Yeah.
Swayman situation last year. But I also give them credit for making some of the tough decisions midseason.
Yeah.
One decision I don't think they made a great decision on was firing Jim Montgomery.
I agree.
Made a little rash there, but if maybe they saw the writing on the wall and said, "Okay, we are committing to this retool," maybe that wasn't. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I think a plus for them is pretty much their entire core has 4 more seasons left on their contracts. So there's time to do this retool.
And none of them are and most of them are at an age where you would expect them to still be playing at a pretty high level in that window as well.
Yeah. 100%.
Next up, I had San Jose. I've liked a lot of what Mike Greer has done. But if you wanted to argue that they belong in the previous episode, I'm not. They were very close, but and even I'd maybe put Boston ahead of them, but I think Greer has a pretty clear direction at least, which is I think a good thing.
There's a difference in making moves to hit the floor that might not be the greatest moves, and then just signing guys hoping they're going to play well. Like that's not really like 1 year 4 million for Klingberg, 2 years 6.5 for Orlov, bringing in Jeff Skinner 1 year 3 million. San Jose's in a spot right now where they have the space on the roster, not just cap space, but those spots aren't, or those veterans aren't taking up space where prospects can't push into the NHL.
We had gone into the defense. I pushed back a little last episode on the defense there. It's not like it's a major issue, but you do have Mook Medulin
But she should be in the starting lineup.
and then Sam Dickinson as well.
Maybe.
Maybe Luca Cagnoni is going to push for a spot, but he doesn't need to.
Right.
Again, I don't have. I think there's a reason that I think more favorably of San Jose's front office over like a Chicago or Anaheim, because those three really are kind of similar situations over the last couple of years, and the only player that Mike Greer has really committed any significant term to so far is Tyler Toffoli, who has become a social media superstar with kind of with Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini. Basically, he's become kind of like the dad for those two young players, which, and by the way, he's also still playing at a very high level. So that's
Yes.
a move that did make and continues to make a lot of sense, even though it is a little bit more term.
It's, to be fair, like it's what Chicago thought they were doing.
Yes.
Same off season, but it's what they thought they were doing with Bertuzzi and Teravainen.
Yeah.
It just has worked for San Jose, which I will say Toffoli is the best player of those three.
Yeah, I think going into last offseason, we would have, if you asked us who to pick of those three, we would have highly recommended Toffoli.
Yes. But that's like your point absolutely makes sense there.
Also, had brought in last offseason Alex Wenberg to
Yep.
be to take some of the more tougher deployments away from Smith and Celebrini, which again contrast that to Chicago. Chicago never has still not really done that. Found that center that they can put out in the
Well, they kind of tried to find some defensive guys. Dickinson. It just
yeah.
I think Chicago's more of a slightly different, unique situation where just nothing they've done has worked well to the point where I don't even think they're putting Bedard in the best of spots.
Yeah, and we talked about
But
Chicago last episode, so go back
yes,
and listen if you want thoughts there. But both the play like Wenberg and Toffoli also are like you told me to pick Wenberg or Dickinson. I'm picking Wenberg. You told me to pick Toffoli or some of the Chicago. I'm picking Toffoli. So Mike Greer. So yes, it hasn't worked, but I also think Mike Greer has done a better job identifying the players that make a little more sense for this than the
yes.
Chicago front office kind of did, which again is why San Jose gets ranked higher.
Yeah, and nothing that he has done has taken away from that direction, that plan.
This offseason, San Jose overpaid, but makes sense. They're still not the salary cap floor. If you listen to a couple episodes ago, we had talked about San Jose. We expect they'll probably end up acquiring Carey Price's contract from Montreal once signing bonus is paid out in early September. So that's probably how they're going to get to the floor. And again, there's a plan in place by Mike Greer to get there. It seems like without doing anything that's going to basically without signing Mikael Granlund to a 3 year, $7 million contract.
Oh yeah, so pretty much nothing is impacting the future in a negative way.
Yeah, the only a little bit of criticism I'd give Greer, and I gave similar to Anaheim, is Greer has claimed a couple guys on waivers that he probably should have insisted on getting a pick for, but maybe no move clauses or like
Yeah,
maybe there was, but at the same point,
Goudreau and Letty.
Goudreau Letty also traded Henry Thrun for Ryan Reeves. Not that I think Thrun needed a change of scenery, but you also brought in Ryan Reeves.
Yeah, hey, I mean, protect your young guys, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, again,
But
it's not a huge deal. It's one year remaining on the contract, and they have the cap space. Not a huge deal. I mean, you don't love giving up a young player, but Thrun was not
it wasn't
fitting
working in
in
San
well in
Jose.
San Jose.
Yeah.
So moving on, giving him another opportunity is not the worst thing either. So put right above the Sharks, and this is basically just judging new GM Matthew Darsh, New York Islanders. Put them right above the Sharks. I don't know how you feel about that, but
That's fine.
he's had a good offseason. He just has a lot to
Yes.
he just has a lot to overcome.
Yeah. It's been a bold off season. Um he got what is viewed as a real good return for Noah Dobson. He still traded Noah Dobson.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be acknowledged.
Helps that he was able to pick Matthew Schaefer first overall.
Yes. So defensively, they've got a top four still with Schaefer there. Kulak, Pelich, Romanov, Schaefer. Still pretty good, assuming Schaefer is everything everyone thinks he will be.
Yep.
Signing Jonathan Drouin to the deal that he signed, 2 years, $4 million per. To me, that is good value. I think there's a touch higher of a ceiling, maybe a little more potential in there than some past signings that the Islanders have done, which again haven't been Darch. I'm curious to see how this team looks. They've been a team in the past recently where I've kind of said I would be curious to see them play a different style of hockey. And I don't know if that will really come because it's still Patrick Waugh coaching. It's not a coaching change. But I'd like to see a little more lean on offensive play. Last year they signed Anthony Duclair. That's a pure offensive player. I'd like to see a little more speed. Like, let's see Matthew Barzal kind of how he looked when he first came into the league. Let's play with some speed, not always sit back, and maybe this team looks a little different. There's a lot of players here with offensive talent, guys that can score goals. Kyle Palmieri, Anders Lee, some of the veteran guys can score. So it could be a quick turnaround, especially if some of the youth that is around. Shouldn't overlook Emil Heineman, who was brought in that Dobson trade
Yeah.
as kind of a sneaky good, likely bottom six guy on this team, but an offseason where there's kind of some good vibes around the Islanders.
Yeah. And value wise this offseason, the Islanders were one of the stronger performing teams by basically giving less than we had projected. You mentioned Druin, Heinen. Those would be probably the two biggest contracts driving that. Palmieri came in a little bit under as well. Yeah, I I don't disagree with. It'll be. I think what will be interesting is. So you point out Patrick Waugh, still the coach. Was the structure and emphasis on the defensive game him or Wu basically saying this is the style of hockey I want you to implement so you get it done?
Which is very possible.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where, like, I think putting them right in the middle of this ranking pretty much is a perfect spot because so far in the first off season of this regime, they seem to be willing to go out and make some moves to build the roster they want. So I'm kind of hoping that also leads to that change in philosophy on the ice.
Yeah. They're one that I'm very interested to kind of monitor what choices they make in the next 12 months basically, because you had mentioned a lot of those veteran players. A lot of those veteran players also are going to be free agents in the next year or two. So are they going to commit to more of a rebuild, retool, or what kind of approach do they take and when do they approach it? It's going to be very
Yeah.
interesting, and Darsh has the potential to probably turn things around really quickly. Like you mentioned, Anders Lee still really good at scoring goals. Also will be a pending is also a pending free agent. Trade deadline, he could be someone to bring back a nice young prospect
Yeah.
asset if that's the route that the Islanders decide to go. So
They've got young prospects coming.
yeah, so I've dumped on Lou for years, but he did really well in the Broughton Nelson trade.
Yep.
And then Darsh, I had a phenomenal draft this year to kind of follow that up. Lou also had drafted Cole Iserman as
Yep.
well, another high ceiling type of player. So yeah, the Islanders turned their prospect pool around. Lou does deserve a little credit
Yeah.
there for doing that, but Darsh really did a really nice job so far this offseason. But we'll
Yep.
see what direction they go because he also still could that Dobson move could blow up in his face as well.
Yeah, I think the a good way to wrap the Islanders, in my opinion, is they're in the middle of our rankings and they're kind of right in the middle as far as they could go either direction at the mid-year trade deadline point this year.
Yeah. Next night at Columbus, I don't know how much I even have to say. Like I think The Provorov contract don't like at all. But then they did a bunch of other. Basically, they had broken even in our overall contract value, which means some of their other ones they did well on. Outside of the Provorov contract, which I hate to say was not quite a necessity, but it was trending like they kind of couldn't let him walk. They did well with the Fabro contract, and then just some of the younger guys were pretty spot on with where our projection had lied. Like Dmitry Voronkov was pretty close to where we had projected.
Yes, I will say, considering the space that they have, I would have liked to have seen them go long term, if possible.
Don't disagree. I
So,
don't think
like,
I ever disagree with that, but
I don't mind, right? I don't mind the value ultimately of that contract, but considering the situation they're currently in, I would have liked to have seen a long term commitment there.
yeah, that's fair. I don't know if I love the acquisition of Coil Wood from Colorado.
Yeah,
Like to me, it's fine. Like to me, their front office and what they did this offseason, what they did last offseason, kind of all just it's fine. I don't
yeah.
know.
I mean, offensively, they pretty much have Lindstrom coming
Yeah,
as a significant prospect. They can find a spot in this lineup for him.
if he's ready this year. Yeah,
Right. Well, and then if he's not in a year, like they'll be able to do it. So this is one I'm almost. I think I'm okay with everything that they've done. Ultimately, I will say Provorov 100%. That's a ginormous contract. Don't like that. But overall, they're still in a very good spot. I think once, hopefully, we start to see extensions for a lot of the top centers, young centers around the league, seeing the number Fantilli comes in at is going to kind of be a big indicator into what this team can do moving forward.
yeah. That so right now the big Waddell signing was Provorov, which I think negatively of. Most of the other
Yeah.
moves I'm fine with. If he does well with Fantilli, again, I'm back to neutral, maybe a little bit positive,
Yeah.
which is why they're very middle of the road here.
Yep.
Edmonton, again, middle of the road. I don't know. The fact we're talking about Stan Bowman kind of bothers me to
Yes.
begin with.
From a pure how they've handled the offseason, I would argue they could go a little higher. And so here's what I'll say. So Arvidsson didn't really work. Skinner was a free agent. They let him go. Didn't really work. Evander Kane, from a cap management standpoint, wasn't really a fit anymore. They were able to get out of all of that without giving up an asset. They got assets for Arvidsson and Kane. I like that Andrew Mangiapane signing. Isaac Howard, that trade.
Yeah.
That's he could have been a fit for most of the teams in the NHL. That is a perfect move for Edmonton. Acquire a player who can or is believed to be able to step right into the NHL on an entry level contract. 3 years remaining. Just signed it. That's phenomenal. Defensively, they are kind of looking the same as they did last year, and I think assuming everyone's healthy, they should be okay there.
Yeah, but Bowman gave up a lot to bring in Jake Wallman, but worth it. That
It's not a bad price to pay. Like
he
it,
really is what
yeah,
they needed. So I guess they get credit, have to get credit for that as well.
Yeah, and like you said, it was a steep price, but it was worth it. He's a very good player. You're gonna have to give up a first. So really, I mean, this is a Cup finalist 2 years in a row. They're a very similar team. They were kind of able to regroup the depth forwards, both from a veteran and a prospect standpoint. Defensively, they look good, assuming everyone's healthy. The only question I think that they sort of, not that they needed or had to make a change, it was more people wanting them to make a change, goalie.
Yeah, and there's only so much the front office has to work with, and
Right.
that they decide not to allocate assets there. I mean, the one where they maybe got worked. So there's two deals that they signed this offseason that little bit concerning. Trent Frederick, very concerning with 8 years, but the actual cap hit is not that bad. The one that they got worked a little bit on was Evan Bouchard. Not value
Yes.
wise, but only getting 4 years there.
Term.
Yeah, term's an issue. And I think it's a little because they had painted themselves into a corner. And there seemed to have been a legitimate offer sheet threat there, which is why they had to kind of agree to
Carolina.
agree
Yep.
to what Bouchard wanted. Otherwise, yeah, Carolina was seemingly ready to swoop in and do it.
Yep.
So that doesn't that one hurts a little bit, and it's little of their own doing. I think it's a little more of previous regime Ken Holland's doing, but Bowman
Yeah.
kind of has to eat that. Bowman was in place with the when the offer sheets were also given. Yeah, yeah, they were. He was. I believe he had recently been hired and taken over.
Okay. Yeah.
Regardless,
Yeah.
if not, Jeff Jackson still there was there and still there.
Yep.
So I think I don't know that was plus and minus. Like Jeff Jackson was the kind of acting GM at the start of last offseason, kind of got him into the mess where they were vulnerable to the offer sheets. But I think the subsequent moves, so they lost better players than they got back, but they Vasily Podkolzin was a great kind of pivot. Ty
Yes.
Emberson was not a bad pivot. Not he's not Broberg.
No.
And if they had kept Broberg, they probably don't have to go out and get Wallman.
True.
But I'd say at least the Podkolzin idea pivot losing Holloway was has worked out pretty well, and I think they do deserve some credit there as well. So,
Yes.
but still the looming question of goaltending, and still the looming question of should Stan Bowman actually be an NHL GM again? Well, I don't know if that's really a question. I think that's a pretty clear answer, but
Yeah.
no is the correct answer. Just
Well,
just
yeah.
just if you're listening and wondering what we're why we're stringing that along. I'm gonna say the next four teams because you tell me whatever order you want them in. You can tie them all for all I care. Devils, Wild, Blues, Jets. All of them I can point to pros. All of them I can point to cons. Let me go back to the question that I had ended last episode. Kind of started with this one. If you were starting a franchise and you were picking one of these front offices, you can even have a couple of the previous ones we talked about. Who are you picking to start your franchise with at this point in these rankings?
Uh, at this point,
You can still have the Penguins front office if you want.
nope. I'm going to go with Darch, the recent new exciting general manager.
Okay, that's fair.
There's risk there because there's not much sample size. That said, I have some issues with pretty much everyone so far.
Fair. I don't know if I disagree with that pick. We'll see how much longer we go after we get through this clump of teams where Darsh is still your answer,
Right.
but yeah, don't I don't wouldn't push back too much on that. I might.
Greer is close for me.
Yeah, Greer's close. Billy Guerin or Armstrong with St. Louis would be.
There's things I love and very much don't like about what both have done.
Yeah, so let's get into that. Well,
Well, Devils first, based off your rankings. We could do
yeah,
Devils pretty quick, I
yeah,
think. To me, they just need to stay healthy. Whether it's Jack Hughes, Dougie Hamilton, Nico Hischier, they need to stay healthy. Markstrom,
yeah,
like, let's get a season and into the playoffs where they are a fully healthy team.
yeah. Tom Fitzgerald has been very up and down for me in his tenure in New Jersey. When he first came in, loved everything he had done. Then very much soured on him 2 years ago, in that goalie was a very obvious need.
Yeah.
Their blue line was not great. Like they didn't, they had the talent, but they didn't put it all together, and end up firing Lindy Ruff, who was, I think, a little scapegoated for mostly Fitzgerald's failure to identify a decent goalie.
Yeah.
Then this kind of, since firing Ruff, I think he's had a pretty good. He's done pretty well with the additions and tweaking of the rosters. Do question a little bit his plan on the blue line. You mentioned making sure Hamilton stays healthy. That goes a long way. But I do question what his vision is of what type. Which is he? Does he want to see young players or veteran players playing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of that for me. There's also just in general a lot of money tied up into the blue line, which I guess is turns into the same conversation of should you be giving more opportunity to some younger players still on entry level contracts? Nemec, Casey. It's possible both of those players are kind of generally out of the lineup.
At least one of them probably will be. Potentially both.
One definitely will be. If there's health all around on defense, one of them for sure will be.
So far this offseason, contract value wise, New Jersey, Tom Fitzgerald and the Devils have ranked, I believe, just eyeballing the second in best in getting the contracts under our projections the most. But they still have a big one out there.
Luke Hughes.
And I'm concerned about how that's going to resolve itself. And basically, my concern is if they end up going short term because they can't fit a long term deal in cap wise, I might need to knock Fitzgerald down the rankings a few notches.
I don't disagree. Yeah, so a little over 6 million in space. I don't see how they make a long-term deal happen without moving money out.
Yeah.
Even a short term, like it's I would think you're looking at like 2 years.
Yeah.
With that amount of money left.
Yeah.
So yeah, short term would not be great for Luke Hughes.
kind of, I mean, the one to look is the Kovacevic extension that he did in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
That that's the money that should probably have went to Luke Hughes long term, and also a roster spot for one of Nemec and or Casey. That might be the very questionable. Also, was a pretty high value, $4 million for.
Yeah.
Am I safe to say third pair, or should I say bottom four?
Bottom four probably. He's very much like same spot as Will Borgen, which is pretty much the contract.
Yeah,
I think you're fine if he's your number four and you have a really good 1 through 3. But in general, like he's probably, again, with everyone healthy, he's on your bottom pair. And then you have most likely him and Dylan both making $4 million a year. So you have an $8 million bottom pair.
yeah,
Strong defensive group. Kind of look at a team like the Capitals, strong defensive group, but you don't have everyone making that much money, which kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning. Like too much money tied up.
yeah.
Too much money tied up in the defense.
Anything else on the Devils before we move to the Wild?
No, don't think so.
Minnesota.
I like a lot of what they've done. I don't know what's happening with Marco Rossi.
Yeah.
And by that, it's not that I don't know what's happening. It's I don't know what Bill Guerin is doing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what is he thinking?
Yeah. Going back to even last offseason when Rossi was eligible for an extension, I don't think there was much movement there. There was never really any reports or anything coming out about that. So, yeah, he has not been in a hurry to sign him. Still is not in a hurry to sign him. Seemingly was okay trading him, but the moves that he maybe was okay trading him in, the rumor was he maybe was on the table for JJ Peterka from Buffalo, which then I question what's Guerin's vision for this roster, because Minnesota needs center play.
That would have been Eriksson, Hartman, Johansson, pretty much 1, 2, 3, which is iffy.
Yeah. I mean, Guerin's entire tenure has kind of been defined by what's your how do you envision your forward group? He seems to be favoring wingers driving play to an extent.
Yes, and also I think he in general prefers size.
And grit
Yes.
and hits.
I mean, down the middle, Rossi is there, but the other 3 to 4 centers, Eric, most likely Eriksson, Hartman, Sturm, Trennan, Johansson, maybe if he needs to, but it's probably those other 4 I mentioned, and they all play physical, or at least, well, no, I will say a more physical type game.
Yeah. Definitely with more grit.
Yep.
Another kind of questionable move I go back with Guerin. So Guerin made the bold decisions going back to buy out Parise and Suter and actually navigated that pretty well. And maybe that's going to work out long term for the best for the Wild. But one questionable move, and it was in season. It was the trade for Eurocheck. They gave up a lot for him, and they don't even necessarily have a guaranteed spot on their roster yet for him. Like last season, he was mostly in the AHL, some up. That's fine if you're like integrating mid-season is kind of tough, especially for like a younger defenseman. That's fine and excusable, but didn't really do much this offseason to necessarily clear a roster, like a clear roster spot for him. And after the amount of assets they gave up, you would think that it would be very obvious that this is where he's slotting in.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think so. Brodeen's gonna miss time at the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
so he should have space to start the season, or a space in the lineup. We don't really know how Boyum is going to look, and Spurgeon health wise, you hope he is healthy all year. May not be the case.
Yeah. I mean,
Bogosian, like, potentially could end up in the press box a little bit.
yeah.
I'm not trying to downplay that there's a lack of space. I think, if anything, I'm highlighting that there's a lot of uncertainty. I guess it depends how you want to look at that uncertainty, whether it's good or bad. I guess I would say it's probably both. It depends how you want to look at it. But could Juracek end up in the minors again? Yes. Would that be the greatest thing? No. He's also 21, so it's not the end of the world if that happens. I don't think.
They did clear one spot by trading Declan Chisholm away,
Yep.
which basically gave him away.
Yeah.
Then the only other question with that I kind of have with Guerin's overall roster asset management has been Wallstat. Kind of this year he should be the backup,
Yeah.
but Gustafson's is a pending. This is his last year of his contract, so an extension would need to be reached there. If they want to go like commit to him, but the issue is you don't know what you have in Wallstat. It's going to be very similar to the decision Nashville had to make with Askarov, and they end up trading the younger
Yeah.
goalie, keeping the older. That's basically what Minnesota's kind of building up to. I it's tough to say no to Marc-Andre Fleury wanting to come back, but really they Wild probably should have said no and given Gustafson more, or sorry, given Wallstead more of a look behind Gustafson
Yeah.
to kind of see what they have. And Wallsted's season in the AHL last year was not great, which is another. So there's some concerns there
Yeah.
with how he's ultimately handled having one of the best goalie prospects in the entire league and kind of his situation there. So
Gustafson also, at this point, you mentioned he is extension eligible, I believe.
yeah,
Well, I know he is. I think
yeah,
you
yeah,
mentioned that. I believe we had him somewhere in the low sevens at the start of the off season. As soon as Thatcher Demko signed for $8.5 million, you can bump Gustafson way up.
yeah. That's
So the decision there in net became even harder this offseason
yeah.
with where the goalie market went.
Stay in the Central with the Blues and Jets. So the Jets I had a little bit higher. It's just I don't know. They've been very steady. Cheveldayoff's been a very steady hand. Yes, they lost Ehlers. I don't know if that's necessarily a front office thing or more. I think the player was ready to. He seemingly wanted to play for an East Coast team to reduce travel, and like Cheveldayoff can't do much about that.
Yeah.
But to me, he's done a good job keeping the Jets competitive. I don't know if he's swung for the fences enough. I think that's a criticism, but he also hasn't done anything super egregious either, which is why he comes in just a little above average.
I would have been okay bumping them down a little bit because I feel like their team has overall gotten a little worse over the past year or two.
And I'm not going to push back on that. Like, right around average to me is fine. I lean a little above because they have been pretty steady on the positive side, but
Yes. Well, and so they're not a bad team. I worry this off season that one bigger hole on their roster, which was 2C, they, in my opinion, they have a lot of faith, unwarranted faith, in my opinion, in Jonathan Taves.
potentially.
Or they're just saying, okay, we'll try that. If it doesn't work, we have Nemestikov, and later in the season, Lowry will come back. That's what we've done, and it's been good enough.
Maybe try Perfetti back at center too, potentially. I'm yeah.
Yeah, I just it. I don't know it, and I'll admit and acknowledge it's easier said than done to acquire a top six center,
Yeah.
but even some guys that like we've known to be available in the past. Let's use Dylan Cousins as an example. That trade involved another top six center going back the other way.
Yeah.
So easier said than done. But it's been a few years, and even going back to bringing in Monahan, that was a rental option. And okay, he's gone now. Replace him. They didn't. Here we are still trying to find a legitimate, consistent 2C. Even going back to Foley leaving, did they really replace him? Not really. Another move where they had to pay decent assets for someone who ultimately left. And then now Ehlers is gone for nothing.
Yeah. Bought out Nate Schmidt last offseason, didn't
Yeah.
necessarily use that. Oh, I don't know if they end up using all the cap space, but I don't know how necessary of a move that was. And then the playoffs, their defensive depth was kind of at an issue for them. And then Schmidt goes on, has a great season with Florida in a, yes, slightly more sheltered role, but yeah. Yeah,
Well, he had a pretty big role in the
well,
playoffs
yes, but
too. But
he was getting more favorable deployment,
yeah.
I guess I probably maybe should phrase it that way.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I don't know how much down I'd put the Jets. I don't know if I necessarily take Shovel Day off if I'm starting a franchise. I think I'm still on Darsh with you, but he's also been a very steady hand for many, many years, and the Jets have made or been very close to the playoffs many, many times.
If your goal, my summertime inner Yankee fan's going to come out here. If your goal is to be the post Jeter Yankees where you are just good all the time, Shovel Day Off's got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the way he's operating, they're not going to win a cup.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, like, for the situation that they're in, I don't love what they've done.
Yeah.
It would be way different if they were just working up and this was the team that they had.
Yeah. Again, if you want to drop him to basically right at the around the midpoint, fine. Like he's been very average to me. So I wouldn't push back if he was below the Blues, Wild, Devils.
I could pretty easily put him into the Islanders, Blue Jackets area.
Yeah. Yeah. Which again is
Acknowledging
right.
they are a better team than those teams, but like, what have you done recently? Gotten a little worse.
Again, we're basically talking him as an average GM.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
which anyways, Blues.
Yeah, they're
To me, they're similar to the Wild in that there's been some really good moves and then some very questionable and I don't know your direction with your roster type things.
So I'm someone who didn't love the Bolduc for Mayu, Milo,
Yeah, I don't.
that
I think a
trade.
lot of people didn't love that, but
I get the need/want to have a young defenseman with some potential coming. I just Bolduc looked really good, and I think they weakened their forward depth a bit there. That said, the offer sheets they did to Edmonton, bringing in Broberg and Holloway, that went very well.
yeah.
About as well as you could hope for. So that's huge. Snuggerud as a prospect coming in and pretty much seeming like he can be potentially a top 6 winger right away, if not a real good third line winger. That's a win. I don't really know how I feel about St. Louis. I'm not overly excited about them. I'm curious to see a full off season with Montgomery as the coach coming into training camp preseason, and let's see how they do a full year with him as the coach.
My biggest issue with probably Armstrong has been how he's handled the blue line. A lot of veterans,
Yeah.
a lot of unnecessary veterans in, and you point out how they wanted to get younger. They do need to get younger there, but he kind of created that situation himself.
Yes.
So forward group, I think he's been fine. I had made comments a couple episodes again about Robert Thomas, and someone said that they had to turn off the episode because they couldn't listen to it anymore because
Did
I
someone say that?
so someone on X had to reply that because I said I'm not 100% sure I like him as a 1C.
I did try and tell you.
You did tell
I
me.
did try and
I'll
tell you
back
he's a
off that a little
1C.
bit, but the reality is they don't have enough top of the lineup players, which was really the point I was going for in that kind of.
Yes and no.
But regardless, the blue line's the biggest issue. I think they've done decently retooling their forward group. They and as you point out, Snuggerud could be maybe that top of the line player that I'm kind of craving them to have in a year or two. Holloway maybe as well.
Kairu's very good.
He's very good. Yes. Yeah.
Buchnevich is pretty good.
Yeah. Are they 1C? Are they first line wingers on elite playoff teams?
That's fair. So I will say no.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll see next season.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
and
I don't have any problem with them kind of being in the middle here from a
yeah, I
front
mean,
office standpoint.
he won a cup. I think he did pretty well keeping that team the window open for a little while. I think made some moves that weren't great, but he's also dug himself out of those moves pretty well. Again, blue line being the big issue I have. Yeah, no big. Again, a little bit above average, I think, for them makes a lot of sense.
I have a trade idea. This isn't a trade episode, but I have a trade idea.
We never
That
say no to trade ideas.
would never happen because of, well, I never say never because players seem to like St. Louis. Their defense is lacking like a high end.
Yeah.
Erik Karlsson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that also would be another older aging veteran.
Oh, sure, but clear step above anyone they've got on the blue line.
Cam Fowler was kind of that idea, and he actually fit in very well with them. So
True.
yeah, maybe.
But like just from an offensive standpoint,
yeah,
offensive production from the blue line,
yeah,
Karlsson would be huge.
I have Toronto ranked next.
Yep.
Move on a little bit. I have Toronto ranked next. I mean, Trev Leving, another one I can never get right.
Tree living.
Yeah.
He's a tree.
I mean, let Marner walk for nothing. I don't think entirely. Well, I guess actually he got Nick Roy. It's Nick Roy. He goes Roy, right? Or is he Nick Waugh?
I think he's a wah.
Nick Waugh. Another one that we always get wrong. I think every single time we question ourselves. But
Yeah.
to get Nick Waugh back for Marner, which is, I guess, helpful.
I will say that they could have tried to move Marner sooner, but they did try to
Seemingly.
supposedly tried to move him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so ultimately Nick Waugh comes back for Marner isn't great value, but considering he could have walked for nothing, pretty solid.
Did well to get Tavares locked up. Think the trade for Carlo was a very good idea going back to the deadline. I think the question that we both have is, do they now have enough higher end forwards to they've got a lot of good third and fourth line players, good to decent, but do they have enough players that you're going to feel comfortable in the top 6?
So this is a team I'm okay with. I think one top 6 spot kind of just being a whoever. I need Domi or Michelli. Michelli,
Maselli, yeah.
Maselli. One of them needs to, I think, provide a little more, and then I'll be happy with their forward group. I'm not overly confident in that happening. I think both could be very solid third line scoring guys. I would have liked to have seen a cheaper top 6 forward coming in.
Where I give Treleving lots of credit is he's done a very good job remaking the back end of the Maple Leafs roster. The blue line, I should say, the blue line in goalies. Stolarz, he brought in Stolarz, great signing, absolutely great signing, and he's done really, really well reshaping the blue line.
I'm going to give some criticism to the blue line, and it's not necessarily his fault. To me, it's lacking a first pair defenseman,
Yeah, that's fair.
which easier said than done, especially for a team as good as Toronto. It's not easy to just, you're
Yeah.
not drafting one of those guys, most likely.
Part of the issue as well is Morgan Riley fell off a cliff last year.
Yes. I think it was sort of coming even before last year, but last year was bad.
Yeah. Whether we can argue until we forever if he's a true number one, but the fact that he had a very severe downturn last year, yes,
Yeah.
that exemplifies. So I guess that's a very fair criticism, but I think the most of the moves that he has made on the blue line have been very big steps in the right direction.
Yes.
And as you pointed out, finding that number one defenseman is going to be tough, especially with the kind of cap hits he absorbed coming in as GM. So
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. In general, I think he's done a good job. They have more depth.
they were another team that did really well this offseason, getting contracts done below our projected market values for players. Just kind of interesting to point out there.
Tavares,
Knives, he did
Knies
Knives was a
was
little bit above, but
a little
he did
above.
well on that contract, especially with the playoffs. And
Yes.
let me phrase it this way: the fact that some of the comps that Paterka came in, I will say Paterka in particular came in where he did. I think he ended up basically staying in that same ballpark.
Yeah.
Was a win for him. Moving on.
Yeah.
Moving on. Colorado is my 11th ranked team. Do you think they're too low?
So I was kind of about to go there. I was going to say I like this spot for them because they still have some cap space to work with this year.
I've really soured on. I talked about it a couple episodes ago. I've really soured on them this past season.
To me, it's really the unused space. That's about it.
I don't love how they handled the Rotten and Nelson, just kind
Yeah,
of the
I
in
guess
season acquisitions.
Nelson was fine,
Well, and then the subsequent re signing. I don't,
which was maybe a touch high, but that was about, it was a little above our projection.
yeah.
Not a lot, though.
No, more they didn't think they could afford Rotten and then go and give it to Nelson and still are sitting with space and
Yes.
that basically gets you to Rotten and yeah, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Well, right now, if they remove Natchez, they fit Ronnen,
Yeah,
assuming Ronnen goes 12 mil with
yeah.
Colorado.
Maybe it was a little yeah. Maybe it would have needed to be a little.
They would be able to do, oh no, yeah, 12.5 they'd be able to do removing Natchez.
So, anyways,
But
that whole situation, the fact they still have unused space, the just the lack of clear direction this past year for me has made me sour on them. And by sour, I mean for a while I considered them maybe a top 5 front office in the league. So like there was a high bar there, and the it I don't think they've cleared that bar recently.
yeah, I guess so. For me, it's really the unused cap space, which kind of ties into the whole Rantanen situation. But overall, like they're still kind of the same team that they were. A lot of the same players are around still that they did make good decisions with. And they did a great job figuring out their goalie tandem and pretty much pulling the plug on bad goalies and bringing in good ones, which I
Yeah,
think is huge. I don't think that can be overlooked.
that's fair. I think another just like point is I think some of these other front offices have just done much better, which is why
Yes.
Colorado kind of ends up where they are here.
I find it to be very, I keep saying it, but considering they are consistently a cup contender at this point in the offseason, there's no RFAs they need to sign. Why do you have $6 million in cap
Yeah.
space?
Yeah. They have more space than the Buffalo Sabres, who get criticized for not spending to the cap.
Yeah.
Let's just point that out here real quick.
Yeah.
So moving into the top 10. Actually, before I do, is Matthew Darsh still your pick for starting your franchise, or do you have someone to replace him? I feel like the way we discussed it would either be the only possibilities would be the last two, the Leafs or Avs.
I would take the Avs.
I think I would still agree with that. I think I'm still on board with your choice, but now we move into the top 10. 10 for me, Calgary Flames. Craig Conroy, I think, has done a phenomenal job retooling that roster on the fly, making tremendous draft picks. Seemingly, I mean, it'll be a little bit of time before we kind of see how those pan out, but keeping his team competitive while also setting his roster in a really good spot.
Yeah, there's some solid prospects coming. Zane Perek
Yeah,
defensively could make Rasmus Anderson potentially leaving not too noticeable.
might even be an upgrade.
Might even be an upgrade. This team, we've mentioned it a bunch of times. If they were in the Eastern Conference, they make the playoffs point wise. I guess, if I want to criticize them, high end talent, I'd like one more player on this roster, It's very possible Perek becomes that player, but I'd like to see one more. Even right now, like where Uberdo's at and Nazem Kadri, those are kind of the two column stars offensively, and I don't think either are who they once were. They're still solid, especially Kadri. I think he's 34 years old. He's well into his career. I think he's still an underrated center.
Yeah.
But like I want to see one like superstar player on this team. But other than that, I don't really have a true criticism here.
Yeah. He's done really well trading when he traded Elias Lindholm, really good return. I would like to maybe a high end forward I think is what's missing from
Yeah.
their prospect pool. Couple
Yeah.
really solid like thought of defensemen, but the fact that last at the trade deadline, I know that he probably would have liked to have sent some futures out, but the fact that he was patient, like I think there's times to be aggressive. There was a time like we talked about last episode, Kevin Adams with the Sabres should have been aggressive at one point. I think for the Flames to not be aggressive showed very good restraint on his part, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I think he's done a very good job. And if these prospects develop, I could see if we did this next off season or another off season from now, potentially top 5 for Calgary, the way they're trending.
Yeah.
So another front office that's really trending up, Ottawa, I have next. They've had, I was skeptical, but they've had a great, I think, last 12 months or so, I'll say.
Yeah, I'm a fan of I think what they're doing. Norris Cousins trade. I don't hate that for them. I was very much on board with it. It's time to move Dylan Cousins. Feel like moving Norris was welcomed. It was kind of time to do the change of scenery. And I think even if Cousins doesn't quite pan out to what you'd hope he would be, making that move I think is okay as Ottawa.
Yeah, I
And,
don't.
and that's my biggest criticism, I think, of recent moves.
Yeah, that might be a slight negative. Like we'll see what happens. We'll see
Yeah.
what happens. Cousins was not good in his end of time in
No.
Buffalo by any means. He didn't look great in Ottawa, but he was better
Yeah.
than what he showed in Buffalo. But unless Norris absolutely lights it up,
Right.
yeah. At worst, this is maybe probably a slightly negative move, but all their other moves certainly outweigh and just really solid. Like haven't really done anything egregious recently. A lot of good contracts on their books. Lots of good younger talent. The Allmark trade was phenomenal, even if it was kind of handed to them on a silver platter.
Yeah.
So
They've just built a good roster, and some of it was already kind of done before
yeah,
this regime, but I think maybe because of that, maybe they get bumped down a little. Maybe they're more in the St. Louis Blues
yeah,
area, but St. Louis Blues, I guess I will say, in Minnesota, Winnipeg, that area, we were also acknowledging that there were some bad things that they did, and I don't really see that with Ottawa. Again, like maybe the Norris Cousins trade becomes that, but I think they were also at a point where it was just time to make a change there. And I think worst case scenario, they're kind of left with a similar situation player there.
Yeah, maybe a very savvy trade and bringing in Fabian Zetterlund from San Jose. We'll see. Again,
Yes.
that's another one where they kind of swapped out a similar type of player to get a different type of player, but Zetterlund probably more upside than Zach. Us pen us the
Yep.
sorry, I closed it.
Zetterlund definitely has more upside.
Yeah. I closed and was not looking at his name
Yep.
anymore, and I don't even know if I would have had a shot.
Ostapchuk or some. Apologies for
Yeah, well, we
potentially
probably should
butchering
just
that,
move
but
on.
yeah.
No, I think basically everything we said about Ottawa applies to Utah as well, who I have next, with the kind of them getting a bump for the Paterka trade.
Yes. They dealt from pretty much a position of strength, moving Kesselring. They did also move Josh Doan, but that's kind of moving a player who was in the bottom six of your lineup, maybe with some more potential, but getting a clear top six winger. Their top six looks very good, complete. There's not really a hole there.
Even if some of the question marks about Paterka's defensive game do continue to persist, and maybe he's not maybe the true like first line winger that he could become, they should be fine with what they gave up, and that's not to diminish Kesslering or Doan. It's just as you said, they had depth, especially on defense, and they have Sim, Daniil
Simashev.
yes, coming maybe not this year, but in their
Yep.
organization, and he's in North America now. They have Daniil Boots as well at forward. So like they have players that can step into some of these holes that they maybe have created for themselves.
Yep.
So it's worth the gamble. And gamble's a very strong word, but they're yeah, there could be a little bit of maybe Paterka isn't quite as much as hyped, but they're fine. They would be okay with that.
Yeah, I don't have any issue. I think that trade's a plus for them. They've got just a ridiculous fourth line to deal with. Could absolutely get caved in, but I would, if I'm an NHL player, I don't want to be on the ice when that fourth line is on the ice. They added Brandon Tanev to O'Brien and Stenlin this offseason. Fine value, 2.5 mil. Yeah, defensively, so Kesselring out, but they brought in Nate Schmidt, who is probably, well, he could end up as the number four, just kind of depending on how the pairings kind of fall into place. But defensively, like they look good still. Vejmelka in that. I worry a little bit about Vanacek being the backup. We'll see. I think they are an improved team though.
Yeah, it is be interesting if they were still under the in Arizona, kind of under that ownership, if these same moves are happening, or if if the front office had a plan, they've executed, whether they were handcuffed in Arizona or not, they have executed a very well thought out and well developed plan these last couple years, and have used their draft capital and their futures very wisely. So
Yes.
they've built up a very nice NHL roster while also stockpiling their AHL and their organizational depth with good young talent. So again, if that was kind of forced on them by ownership in Arizona or not, the fact that they are where they are they get a lot of credit.
Yes.
Quite honestly, I would the next. So I got 7, 6, 5, 4, and 3. Let's real quickly just get my top two out of the way, and then let's kind of finish with this other very, very good group of teams.
Okay.
So number one, Florida Panthers, no question. I mean, two-time reigning Stanley Cup champs, lost, have been to three
Yeah.
straight Cup finals. just the only criticism is maybe the Sam Bennett contract this offseason. That's like the only potentially bad move they might have made, like
Yeah.
at all in the last couple of seasons. But I don't think we can argue about much more than that.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say about them. We'll kind of, I guess, see like the Jeff Petrie ad is kind of this offseason's version of bringing in a Nate Schmidt, bringing in a OEL.
Yeah.
I like both of those other two defensemen better than Petrie.
Yeah.
But like we'll see, and they kind of get the benefit of the doubt there, like you said, back to back. Don't have a whole lot to say.
Number 2, I have Carolina. Maybe you would disagree with that,
I
but
would.
okay.
This is, I think, the biggest one that, or the biggest difference I would have had if I also made a rankings list.
Where would you have put Carolina?
They would have been down pretty much below, well, I won't give it away, but they would have been kind of right where Utah is.
Okay.
For me, which would have, when I was kind of going through this initially, that would have been my biggest difference from your list.
Yeah, I had them pretty clear too. And then I'll just give the rest of my ranking. We can kind of just back and forth them. So at Washington 3, Tampa 4, Dallas 5, Montreal 6, and Vegas 7. So Vegas right above Utah.
Yep.
I like a lot. I know that the moves they've made have not. So like the Gensel trade did not work out. The Rotten trade they end up trading again, but I think the Rotten trade they actually made out pretty darn well with what they got back in return. Yes. I love the Keandre Miller acquisition.
Yep.
I think they've just done very, very well using their assets, using their cap space, and just making a lot of smart, savvy moves. They've consistently been one of the best teams in the league. I know they have not reached the cup final, but yeah, I can't point to a lot of negative moves that I would say for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I give them the edge over most of the other teams. I would say the one of the teams I was very close to putting actually this high was Montreal, but I want to see maybe another year of progress and or sustained success from that front office.
So that's interesting because I was just going to say I think I would have dropped Montreal a little bit, so Carolina would be not back as far.
So maybe 5-6 for Carolina.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess this is a tough one because there's the current regime who was kind of there, just not in charge. A lot of the moves they've made recently have been good. I don't know. I struggle to feel like this is much different of a team. Maybe I'll be proven wrong.
Yeah, I mean that's entirely fair. And I guess my question back would be, is that a negative?
So for me, I'm going to kind of apply the similar thought process I did with Winnipeg. Is like you're a very good team. I want to see you for sure get better, which Carolina I think has done that much more so than Winnipeg, which is why they would still be very high. I just don't know if I would have them second. I don't know if they're improved enough for me to put them second.
I mean, having Ehlers long term's an improvement. Is that an improvement over keeping Gensel or Rotten? Probably not, but yes, going into this season, I think it's an improvement on paper. Whether their roster midseason is an improvement, well, that's or playoff time, that's I think a fair question. But
Yeah,
again, I can't. There's not a move that they've made and kind of under this regime that I can be overly critical of. And I think that that's kind of what separates them from some of these other teams for me.
I'll give you three things.
Okay.
2C. It's not an issue they created,
Mm-hmm.
but it's been an issue and they haven't figured it out.
Okay.
Potentially like a Stankoven, but or maybe Jarvis, but I don't know. I think in that scenario you're taking someone who's better off as a winger and putting him at center. Defensively, I don't think they've gotten overall better since the new regime has taken over. I think you could maybe argue they are similar, as good. I don't think they've gotten better. I don't think this is a hot take. I don't really know. Similar to the 2C issue, they did not create their goalie situation, but to me, they have kind of been juggling the same group for a while now and have kind of lacked the clear number one starter. So, again, not an issue they created, not anything they did wrong, but maybe some, I don't want to say missed opportunity because the opportunity might not have been there to improve, but ultimately, another spot I think they need to improve.
Yeah, I the defense one I think is the one that I would be most agreeable. Like that, I think that's definitely a maybe a fair criticism.
That to me is on them.
So we'll see how this season shakes out because they basically they have lost a lot of knowns and brought in more unknowns, which could be good, could be
Yeah,
a major issue.
right.
We'll see there. I think that that's kind of the fair, interesting one to definitely watch. So talking about this last group here, and we probably should wrap this one up if you're still with us. Appreciate it. So my criticism, I'll go through my criticisms on the other teams and kind of why I landed with Carolina, and then you can kind of rebuttal. So
Yeah.
Vegas, they got Marner this offseason. That's massive. But I think that they've went a couple years not putting enough into improving their scoring.
Okay. Yeah.
And their goaltend, Aiden Hill's been good, but if we want to talk about juggling the same kind of cast of characters like Carolina, to me, Vegas has done that with just a little bit more success because they have Hill opposed to Freddie Anderson. But Vegas, I feel like, has missed opportunities to get better, especially up front. Like the West has been open, I think, for them.
Yeah.
And they haven't added enough up front until just getting Marner, and we'll see how that. And that's going to be kind of at the cost of Alex Petrangelo, his salary at least. So I think Vegas's blue line's still fine, and I think they probably improved this offseason, but it's been a couple years where they've kind of been spinning their wheels for me
Yeah.
that's why they fall a little bit lower. Montreal, I don't know how much I can criticize them for. I just don't know if they're quite there and quite have done enough to truly warrant like top 5 consideration.
So that's this isn't one where I'm like they need to drop real far. I would maybe drop them 2 spaces, 2 to 5, kind of in the Calgary, Ottawa, kind of that group.
To me, them and Utah are kind of similar, except Montreal's made the playoffs.
Yeah, but like
Eh,
that was kind of Okay, I guess I'll give you that.
I guess I give Montreal credit because a lot of moves that kind of their current front office have made have been very positive. I think they inherited some I- issues.
Yes. So a lot of what is wrong with their roster is not
Yeah.
the current front office. So I don't disagree with that. I see them more as like, okay, they've taken over, they've made some good moves. That's where I kind of see them in the Calgary Ottawa
Yeah, yeah, that's
grouping.
that's that's fair. Dallas, if Jim Nell didn't have Labushkin and Dumba, and really this offseason hasn't been spectacular. I mean, I guess he's gotten a lot of guys back because, but that's happened because they've leveraged some of their tax advantages and everything.
Yep.
Dallas is the team that's signed the most under our projected value contracts, basically over 1 million under on average. So Nell's done very good work there. Again, it's the blue. It's how he's handled the
Yeah.
blue line the last couple of years that keeps him at 5, but not 2.
Right, I'm with you there. I was gonna say the exact same thing right there. Is if he didn't make those questionable moves, he's right behind Florida.
So I Tampa 4, and them in Vegas kind of same thing. I think that Tampa's done a little bit more the past year or so to, I don't know. I guess maybe talking it out, like I don't know how much I can really separate them in Vegas if you want to give that a shot. I guess they have a better goalie. They have a better that's about it. They have a better goalie for sure.
Do we give them any praise for not keeping Stamkos? As harsh as that is.
Potentially, yeah.
Stamkos out, Gensel in specifically
Yeah.
last off season. Bjorkstrand I like. Gord I like. To a lesser extent, but I think an impactful player. Toronto fans are going to try and laugh us out of the podcast platform they're listening on. But Holmberg as a fourth line addition is a solid
Yeah.
addition. Defensively, they're pretty much the same team, same in net, but in general, like I think my biggest issue with them in past years has been their forward depth, and I think it's a little better. I kind of like what they've done. I think they've cut bait when they've had to, or when they should
Yeah.
have, and kind of made good moves to replace what Stamkos once was.
Yeah. And so I think that I've seen them try to make changes and adjustments and no obvious issues, but also positive changes and adjustments, which I think edges them over like a Vegas and Dallas for me a little bit. But
Yep.
those teams are close. Then number 3, I have Washington, who I feel like the last year or so have struck gold.
It's yeah, it's kind of tough with them because it's like how it's almost like how much of this is real looking at their roster.
I've compared Calgary and Washington in the past, kind of like the path that they're trying to take. Calgary probably a little bit behind, but like
Yeah.
Washington masterful at the very quick retool, and the big gamble really paid off for them.
They've also signed some very good contracts.
Yeah,
Protoss being one of the deals. I'll even say Dylan Strome going back a little bit further. Phenomenal deal. Rasmus Sandin has turned into a pretty solid defenseman. That's a great deal for them. Um, Matt Roy was a good UFA signing. They've made some really solid trades. A very bold one, bringing in Dubois and dumping Kemper.
That was the gamble I was kind of alluding to. Yep.
Yeah, but that worked out for them.
Yes, it has.
Added Logan Thompson, who has kind of become a real good 1A with Lindgren.
Yep.
So they've got one of the better, if not the best, goalie tandem. There's
Yep.
some other teams out there that could give them a run there, but they're just they're good and they're deep forward. Like they could be a little better depth wise, but they're pretty solid depth wise. And defensively, Declan Chisholm's gonna be in the press box.
Yeah.
Um,
Or Trevor Van Riemsdyk, one of the two.
I I think
But
he
I mean,
plays. Faravari might. I don't know the status. He might be hurt to start the season.
yeah.
But in general, like they might have the deepest top 7
Oh
defensemen
yes, yeah. The
in the
fact we're
NHL.
talking about either of those two guys being in the press box is a very good problem
Yeah,
for them to have.
they have 5 top 4 defensemen.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing that this front office has done incredibly well is the organizational prospect pool is just phenomenal.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe I'm
it
overselling it a little bit, but like
phenomenal might be a little strong. It's good.
forward groups is quite good. Blue line, not that they necessarily have spots right now, but like, yeah, that's
Hudson's pretty much like the
that's true
Cole
unsigned.
Hudson
Yes,
is kind of
yes,
the main piece
yeah,
there.
yeah,
But like yeah, they're strong everywhere and they have depth.
yeah,
I think if you want to criticize them, maybe just more true elite players. They're
yeah,
kind of one of those teams where you might want to see like a true elite forward or a true elite number 1 defenseman.
yeah.
But on paper, they are one of the best teams depth wise throughout the entire lineup.
And what's incredible about that is the quickness they were able to turn an aging kind of asset depleted organization into a deep NHL team with a very very good prospect pool. That's been incredible. Like that's what
Yeah,
Pittsburgh needs to do. Really actually probably should have done by now. So the fact that Washington's where they're at, it just really good management.
I will say if they can be completely healthy across the board, they are like a trade deadline move for a top 6 forward
Yeah.
from being a problem in the playoffs.
Yeah. And they have the assets to do it and they have the cap space to do it.
Yep.
So you would where would you put Washington to?
I would. I think prospect draft wise good, contract wise great, trade wise they've done very well. There's not really like an aspect of roster management that they've been bad at recently.
Okay, so if you're starting a franchise, is it Florida for sure the front office you're picking?
I think I kind of have to.
Okay, so let's take them out. Who are you going with?
I might go Washington.
I'll stick with Carolina. I'm still like a lot that they've done.
Carolina's not a bad pick either.
Honorable mention for me, Montreal. I like
Yep.
I like your Washington pick as well.
if I have to go down the board a little more, I would go. Oh, okay. I thought I was picking one team. I'm going to name two. Utah, Calgary
Yeah.
are kind of, for me, both very similar choices.
I agree with that. Is the yeah. So we appreciate you listening. Max Turn Podcast available on all major podcast platforms. Our content is available, including our contract projections on X at AFP Analytics, Threads, Blue Sky as well. Our link tree available through those, where you can find our Buy Me a Coffee tip jar if you feel inclined. We appreciate any contributions. And at the end of the off season, 10% donated to Rochester Emergency Veterinary Service. We appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you next time.